Okay, welcome everyone on this beautiful morning. My name's Darren Bond. I work in the Customer and Digital Group in now the Department of Transport and Main Roads, and Chris will talk to us more about that. This morning I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. We meet on the Yagara and Turrbal people's lands. Can I just mention, this week is Reconciliation Week, so hopefully you've had the opportunity to get out, undertake some activities, understand more about our real history, about First Nations culture. I'll give you some interesting information. It goes from the 27th of May to the 3rd of June. Now that isn't, they're set dates, so it's not always a calendar week, but they represent. The 27th of May is the 1967 referendum, for those old enough to remember that. Sorry, I don't remember it, but I was here. And the second one on the 3rd of June, which is tomorrow, the High Court decision around the Mabo case. So tomorrow is actually Mabo Day. And there is a call to make that a public holiday, so we'll see whether that eventuates. But just some interesting information for you. Housekeeping, emergency, there's exits at the back here and out here. We meet out, there's some grassed area outside, so please go towards there. If you need to use the bathroom, it's straight across the hallway, and I think most of you saw where the sort of patio is out the side here. We'll have a little bit of a catch up at the end of the briefing. So today I will keep the speakers on track. We will finish at 9:30. There's an opportunity, as I said, for networking and a morning tea out the back. There's also a live stream, so for those online, hello, and it is recorded, so you'll be able to go back and see it sometime in the future if you wish. So it is a beautiful morning today. It's a beautiful maroon morning, so obviously we won the men's state of origin, and last night the ladies' state of origin. And I say that for a specific reason, and we'll hear from Chris in a moment. So today our format, we're going to hear from Chris. He's going to talk to us about the digital economy strategy and some of the great things that we're doing at the moment. He and I will then between us, we'll talk about some of the detailed initiatives that are going on, and then we'll have a panel session. So it's an opportunity for you to ask questions. I'll be the moderator, but I'll have some of my colleagues, Andrew Spina and Dallas Stour, come up and join me on stage. So let me hand over to Chris. Chris obviously has extensive private sector experience, international experience, and brings a new focus to government, I'd say. He's been in the role for just over 12 months. We actually started on the same day. And yeah, certainly there's a new energy, a new vibe around what we're doing in the group. So that's been very welcomed and really exciting to work with Chris. So can you welcome Chris McLaren, please?
Can you hear me okay? Is that working? I should have known Darren would start with a reference to the state of origin. No surprises there. Thanks, Darren. You are nothing but predictable. Yeah, so not a good week for New South Waleshmen as far as the football goes, but anyway, we live to fight another day, best of three, and hopefully, is the next one up here or down south? Oh God. That's not going to be good. Yeah, so thanks for joining us. It's good to see the room nice and full. It is a beautiful sunny day in Queensland. So today we're going to do a couple of things. I'm going to do a little bit of a, what have we been up to? I think it's been almost 3 months since we had our last PiT, which was the first that we'd had in quite a while coming out of COVID. And then we'll spend a lot of time talking about the digital economy strategy, which we launched on the 27th of April. And then we'll allow plenty of time. Please come with lots and lots of questions. This is a perfect opportunity to ask us anything and everything about what we're up to. So yeah, a little bit about what we've been up to. And I think that's important to me to talk about. You know, one of the things I've learned since being in the role, it is a big group. You know, we've got 1,600, 1,700 people. and we just do so much stuff, and we just keep knocking these things out of the park, and I love talking about it because, you know, if nothing else I've learned since coming to Queensland is that Queenslanders, maybe with the exception of the rugby league, are humble people, very welcoming, just get on with it, get the job done. They never brag about winning or anything like that. So anyway, the team does just amazing things. The commitment to excellence, the commitment to output, the commitment to making a difference for the community in Queensland is just phenomenal, and I love talking about that, what we're doing. The other reason I think it's helpful for you all to understand the things that we care about and that we're focusing on. I just think that gives you more texture and more colour of what actually happens inside the world of CDG. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to put a spotlight on a few of our key partners who are really leaning in to some of the broader digital economy goals and objectives that we have. About the MOG. So yes, on 2 weeks ago today, 2 weeks ago, so there was a cabinet reshuffle. Customer and Digital Group was moved from Communities, Housing, Digital Economy, and now we've been put within Transport and Main Roads. So Minister Bailey has now picked up the digital services portfolio. I've had the pleasure, as is Dallas and Andrew and Darren, of spending quite a bit of time with Minister Bailey since he's picked up the portfolio. He's jumped in and just shown an incredible amount of energy, willingness to learn. He's already been out to our Security Operations Centre. He was at ACS last week, just very engaging. We've had some carrier meetings, and I'm really looking forward to working with Minister Bailey and the leadership team across TMR. I think logically it makes a lot of sense. We've just got this incredible customer-facing footprint, the biggest customer-facing footprint across all of government as we look to deliver better, more digital services. And then I also think about this other incredible marriage between the digital driver's license and digital identification, all that great work that's happening in TMR, and all the work that we're doing within CDG through Tell Us Once and our efforts to re-platform and offer more digital services. They just go hand in hand. So I'm really excited about the move. It's onwards and upwards for us. No real changes in terms of the group. We'll be still a contiguous group. We're actually going to grow a little bit, which I can talk about at some other point. But we will continue to have that same whole of government, Queensland, digital government, and digital Queensland focus. Since our last meeting, we've had our second forum, Building Digital Equity Forum. So this is an initiative that we kicked off last year, working with all the PiT disability groups, Queenslanders with Disability Network, Queensland Advisory Council, research, institutions, as well as some of our friends and partners from the digital sector, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft. Many of you are here. We had a second forum. It's actually where we launched the digital economy strategy. And I just want to acknowledge everybody in the room. Many of you are here who are leaning into that. We're doing some great work across, I think it's 7 work streams now, looking at accessibility, awareness, affordability, device availability, and just a broad inclusion agenda to make Queensland the most digitally inclusive state that we can possibly make it for our friends out there in the community who are dealing with a disability. And many of the partners in the room have said to me there's nothing really like this happening in any other jurisdictions, which I think is good. It's something we can be proud of. But the negative, I guess, is we'd like to think that these sorts of things are happening all over the country to help people who have a disability leverage the power of digital for employment, for literacy, just for staying connected with friends and family. So that was a big thing we had in April. We have these quarterly. We've got another big one coming up. If you want to get involved, we'll provide details later on if you'd like to get involved in that program. Digital Workforce Action Plan is rocking and rolling. We've now trained over 5,000 Queenslanders on how to undertake a digital career. A very diverse group of people. We tend to over-index on excluded cohorts, whether it's seniors, whether it's veterans, I think I'll talk about veterans in a little bit, people with disabilities, First Nations people, but that program is rolling. That program will run for another 18 months. That's under Darren's leadership. We've released our cybersecurity hazard plan. That will be published, I think, any day now, and that kind of gives confidence and clarity on how we respond in the event that we do have a significant cyber hazard. Our Digital First Nations program continues to roll. We completed our First Nations digital audit. We had boots on the ground in all 16 of our discrete First Nations communities across Australia, who are some of the most disadvantaged communities in the country, full stop. And then they're also the most digitally disadvantaged communities in Australia. I think recently the latest list of the most 10 disadvantaged communities in Australia was released. Queensland's got 6 of the 10, the bottom 10. I think we actually share it. It's like 6 in Queensland, 4 in Northern Territory, and they're all First Nations communities. You've got Cherbourg, Warrabinda, I think Wujal, maybe Doomadgee. Yeah, there are all the First Nations communities there. So we obviously have a lot of work to do to help these communities move up and have a better opportunity for their community members. And one of the ways that we can actively do that is through the power of digital. Cherbourg, we've extended the Cherbourg Digital Business Centre. We're now just about to complete training for another 17 people, and that really is just an amazing success story. We've been going on for a year now. We're putting some of our services into Cherbourg. Fujitsu is an anchor client, and we've got more clients on board. You can see some of the team there, and just amazing to see the life-changing impact of people having a good, safe, well-paying digital job, dignity of work, sense of place in the world, sense of purpose. It really is just an amazing piece of work, and we couldn't do it without some of our partners. And we've also signed an agreement to launch a digital business centre in Palm Island, which I'll talk about as well. And then back on the First Nations audit, we've got some announcements and some releases that will be coming up with the Minister in the next month or so. I'm hoping to get that out. We completed consultation on our Queensland Digital Infrastructure Plan. Thanks for everybody who participated in that. This is our 10-year horizon out to the Olympics. If we think about the Olympics, this will be the most digitally enabled Olympic Games ever. 500,000 more times the digital power compared to what Sydney had in terms of the digital capacity that we can leverage. And we obviously need the right infrastructure in place to be able to support those Olympics. We completed consultation on our 10-year cybersecurity, Cybersecure Queensland strategic plan. We kicked off our second cohort of First Nations digital careers participants. We've got 30 people going through Cert 3 and Cert 4 in partnership with Microsoft, and they'll all have guaranteed jobs within government or within industry. In this cohort, they come from all corners of Queensland. It really is amazing. We supported 2 community recovery events, fires in the Western Downs, and then monsoon and flooding up at the top end. And this is probably something that people don't realise, the critical role that we play in times of natural disaster within Queensland, whether it's supporting the infrastructure, whether it's mobilising workforce and technology out to the right locations, whether it's taking calls from people who need assistance. CDG actually plays a critical role in supporting natural disasters. We trained another 45 in Cert 4, cybersecurity across government, another 54 graduates. I think we've brought in something over 500 graduates since the inception of that program, 87% retention rate, which is pretty amazing. So when people go in that program and undertake a digital career within Queensland Government, they tend to stay with us, which I think is just a testament to the opportunity that people get. And then, as I mentioned, digital community skilling pilot, a lot of work up in Townsville, 190 enrolments there, helping people transition out of the military and into a digital career. Really, really important work. Major technology transformation happening in SSQ under Andrew Spina's leadership and Craig Newell. So that's really exciting. That's going to open up a whole raft of new capabilities that we can deploy on top of our already award-winning SSQ function. So that's really exciting. Customer Summit, many of you are involved in the Customer Summit. Next year, that's going to be bigger and better. This is our first foray. I think we had about 200 participants, half a day. I think next year it'll be a full day. The aspiration is that we want to do a Customer Summit at the beginning of the year, a Cyber Summit in the middle of the year, and then a Digital Summit at the end of the year. We're going to ease into that a little bit. I think this year we'll do the half-day Customer Summit. Aspiration plan is for the end of the year we'll do something like a Digital Summit that'll be part digital, part cyber, and then hopefully next year we'll be fully up and running. Full day Customer Summit, full day Cyber Summit, and full day Digital Summit. So just watch this space. Customer sat, 94%, this is for the last quarter, 94% customer sat in SSQ, 90% in SciTech. And I think it's worth noting in SciTech that under Dallas's leadership and Vickers and Connie, over the last 5 years in particular, we've gone from, something in the 50s and the 60% customer sat up to 90%. It's just been a remarkable transformation within that commercialised business unit that really does some very important things for Queensland Government. And then Queensland Shared Services, 88%. The reason the asterisk is there, we measure a few things across QSS, and 4 measures, I think, it's anything from 84 to 96%. So I've just done a bit of an aggregation there. So it just gives you a sense of the importance that we place on customer satisfaction, not only with our internal government clients, which is predominantly SciTech and QSS, but also with customers who call us looking for help. We do 260 services across SSQ, which is pretty mind-boggling, the number of services. I was actually out at Mount Gravatt yesterday, spending some time with the team, understanding what's going on, what are the services we're doing, what can we do better, getting their feedback, and they are just an amazing group of people that come in every day and take calls from customers looking for help. Connectivity, completed 8 LEO trials in our most remote locations. That's obviously an area that we're looking to explore. We are the most geographically diverse state in the country. Anywhere between 500,000 to 750,000 people within Queensland do not have access to sufficient connectivity. It's, no other way to put it. It's just unacceptable, and we've got to do better to make that work. And that's why you'll see so much of our focus, because it's the foundation that the whole digital economy builds upon. We can't talk about anything up here if people don't have connectivity. So we spend a lot of time on that. We'll talk about that soon. We've expanded our Queensland Government regional network to 580 locations across the state. This is SciTech, a really important thing that SciTech does, provides connectivity to councils, government organisations, other entities that aren't able to get sufficient connectivity through typical commercial methods. We're very heavily involved in RCP3, so the federal government's out with 150 million in this round. We obviously want to get our fair share, so we're fighting hard for Queensland to get to co-invest. So part of the digital economy strategy we'll talk about, we've got 120 million to invest in to co-invest with carriers, communities, and federal government. Last time we did this in RCP2, we got about a 5-to-1 ratio. For every dollar that we put in, we got $5 worth of infrastructure. Really fantastic return for the taxpayer and the people of Queensland, and we want to continue to do that. Are we always going to get 5-to-1? Probably not. But we're fighting for the right level of funding from the feds and the carriers to get connectivity into our most digitally disadvantaged areas. We kicked off a big piece of work looking at whole of government data sharing and analytics, really important piece of work. Our customers tell us again and again and again, they want to deal with one government, they want to have a connected, joined up experience, 360 views, single pane of glass, all those sorts of things. And to be able to do that, we've got to be able to join up our data, whether it's transactional data or operational data. That's critical. We have to be able to do that. And in our most recent survey, customers have told us that they trust us with their data 4 out of 5 times, and 3 out of 5 times they're happy for us to share data between agencies. They just want to know when we're doing it. So that's a really important piece of work. And we're mobilising around Gen AI. I'm sure everybody in this room has probably been playing around with ChatGPT and Bard and Claude and all the other things. So we obviously need to have a considered position on this, both in terms of what it means for public servants. We've got hundreds of thousands of people now that now have access to things that they didn't have before. What's the right and appropriate use for that? We'll be initialing draft guidance across the public sector for what we think is appropriate. Make no mistake, there is incredible power in these tools, and we should capitalise on the opportunity that it can give to us, but we need to do it in a way that's considerate of the risks that might present themselves. So a lot of good collaboration with other jurisdictions and the federal government around what we're going to do in that space. We've established a data centre management service, a brand new shiny data centre out by the airport, partnering with iSeek. We've commenced the development of our digital identity strategy. That will be whole of government digital identity strategy. So we'll have a public facing strategy. We'll have an internal policy that sets the rules and protocols for how we want to use digital identity across government. This is obviously for customers coming in to access services, but it's also for accessing the broader economy. And this is something we've advocated very, very hard at the national level, that digital identity is not just about citizens wanting to access government services. It has to work in the real world as well. You have to be able to use it to apply for a mortgage or a loan or something like that, and it also has to work in the online world as well as the offline world. And we've also got 64 services now plugged into our Tell Us Once platform, which is the platform that basically connects all the stuff behind the scenes. So when a customer presents themselves with their digital identity, we can ensure that they've got access to the information that they're allowed to have access to. Allows us to get away with information sharing agreements and all those other complex bureaucratic things. We can now use technology to kind of facilitate that brokerage. I just wanted to call out a few partners who I feel have really lent in. I think last time I was up here, I called out Fujitsu for being our anchor client in Cherbourg. And who else did I call out last time? Prominence for the incredible work that they did in helping tell the story of CDG. You've all seen the booklet and the profile of Queensland Government, our service catalogue. So Prominence, a good Queensland small business, really jumped in and brought some fresh thinking to help us do that. I haven't asked anybody for permission if I can use those logos. Hopefully no one will be upset. Microsoft, really a key partner in our First Nations careers program, and they've also lent in with their expertise. Obviously, they're a major player in the generative AI space with their investment in OpenAI and the work that they're doing to embed their Gen AI capabilities. They've been very great partner. And then Telstra. Telstra's going to be our anchor client for our Palm Island Digital Service Centre. I'll be up there later on this month with the Telstra board, and watch this space. There'll be more news coming out on that one. But when you think about Cherbourg, we've eventually created out of thin air, so to speak, a First Nation small business that employs 30 plus people, many of whom have never had a job before. And then kind of in the same mould in Palm Island, we'll be creating out of thin air a small business that will initially have 25 First Nations employees. Again, many who have never had a job before, aspirations to make that 100 plus. And the plan is we'll be doing similar things in all First Nations communities. I want to call out DB Results. So they're the next next client who's jumped in Cherbourg, and I think we should celebrate when we've got the small business. They call themselves Cherbourg Digital Technology. They've landed a new client, and that's DB Results, and we really appreciate. It can't just be government. We need our corporate partners to lean in and help us do this. And as I say to all of them, it's not a handout, it's a hand up. You don't really need to do anything different. You're not looking for money. You just got to commit to providing a job that someone can deliver on country. We train them up, we get the facility ready, we get the connectivity ready, we do all of the other stuff, and then we provide to you a trained, ready to go, eager employee who's just looking for an opportunity. And then Better Life Mobile. I don't think Better Life Mobile in the room. We're doing some really interesting things with Better Life Mobile, and they've just been leaning in, helping provide different different methods and mechanisms for First Nations people and actually people with disabilities to get access to devices and affordable plans that account for unique circumstances, such as not having traditional forms of ID or being on a special payment plan because of Centrelink payments. And they've just been fantastic, Adrian and the crew, in helping us kind of break down some of those barriers that keep people off of the digital economy. And then, of course, we launched the digital economy strategy. That was a big thing that we've been looking forward to for quite a while. We did that on the 27th of April. And yeah, vision, creating a thriving digital future for all Queenslanders. And there's really three big buckets. So digital customer. We want to make, our customers have told us resoundingly, we want more digital. You know, we've got 5.25 million people in Queensland. Our last customer sentiment survey, 80% of them were resoundingly, I want to deal with Queensland Government online, through apps, through digital services, through the web. 10% are clearly in the bucket of, no, I like going somewhere, I like talking to a person, I like getting a receipt, I like dealing with cash, you know, all those sorts of things. That's fine. We obviously need to support that, particularly for, you know, people in rural, remote areas or people who don't have access to the right level of connectivity. That's fine. And then we've probably got another 10% who are a bit, you know, in the middle. But either way, we need to do better at providing access to efficient, seamless, frictionless services online. So that's a big focus. Then we've got digital market. I think if I could have my time again, I'd maybe call this Digital Queensland. This is all the real world stuff, you know, helping make Queensland a thriving digital economy. So helping businesses, you know, small businesses be more digitally adept and digitally equipped, helping businesses deal with Queensland Government more easily, reducing red tape, all those things that help enable the Queensland economy be more digital. And then the last piece is digital government. You know, uplifting internal digital capability so that we're spending money on the right things in the right way. We've got digital skills, we've got digital capabilities, and we're harnessing the power of digital to uplift the capability of Queensland Government so that we can offer better services, better places to work, better employee engagement, higher productivity, more efficiency, et cetera, et cetera. And then we've got a few things that kind of underpin that. We've set up, I think, what's going to be a world-class digital economy program office that will manage the overall action plan. I think we might even be leveraging a Queensland small business to help us with some of the tools. I'll let Darren talk about that. We're going to be setting up an office of innovation, which is going to be looking at over-the-horizon stuff as well as the cultural aspects and how we embed innovation functionally, whether it's data innovation, application innovation, all those sorts of things. So that's a really exciting space. And then we've got a new First Nations digital strategy group, and we'll be developing a plan that will come out later on this year, I hope, or early next year. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Darren. I think I'm right on time. Woohoo. And he's going to go into a bit more detail.
Yeah, I think you said 5 to 9, Chris. So
all right, you told me 5 past 9.
My tip to anyone is don't try and manage your boss up on stage. And look, for these focus areas, there are 6 priority areas, and I'll just work this through. But we might go to the detail. So the strategy is supported by an action plan. So sitting below the strategy is an action plan with a number of initiatives. We've pulled out some of them, primarily the ones that we'll be delivering against, but there are a number of other departments involved in delivering these initiatives. Chris did speak about the what we call the Depot Digital Economy Program Office. We are selecting a tool. I won't mention it here because we're still in procurement. But that is coming to a completion very, very quickly. So if I look at it, closing the digital divide. So how do we make sure that all Queenslanders can participate in the digital economy? What sort of things do we need to do to make sure that people don't miss out? So whether we've spoken a little bit about First Nations, people with a disability. We've started some initiatives around those spaces. But what about rural and remote people? What about getting more women into our digital economy, into STEM and things like that? What about seniors and a whole heap of other cohort of people? So we'll be developing a number of strategies, undertaking a number of initiatives to try and encourage more and more people into that digital economy. Some of these will be targeted at people already in the workforce. Some will sort of be looking at the pipeline. And we've already begun discussions with Education Queensland about how do we get that pipeline a lot stronger so that we can get more kids, young men, young women into a digital career. If I look at the First Nations Digital Strategic Plan, so we're really excited about this. We believe, again, we'll be the first jurisdiction to have a dedicated First Nations digital strategic plan focused on how do we close that gap to First Nations people, how do we make sure that they can get a great job in digital and wherever possible do that on country. So you don't have to leave your community, you don't have to come down to Brisbane. Very daunting for a number of people. You'll be able to stay on country and get a great digital job. Chris spoke about Cherbourg and Palm and the work that we've already done there. Well, Palm we're just starting to do, but we're looking at other communities as well. So we're starting to work with other communities to start to prepare them and gear them up. You know, there's not just staffing, accommodation, leases, connectivity, a whole heap of things that need to be prepared to allow those communities to be able to deliver services to all of us. And another shout out following from Chris's point, we can't do this alone. We will be putting a number of government services in these communities. Cherbourg already has some, Palm will have some, but we can't do it alone. So if you're able, if you're willing, if you're keen to put more services, doesn't have to be huge numbers, in these communities, then let us know, reach out and we'll work closely with you. We're also working with the State Library of Queensland, people from here, and there's regional development officers, so this will be through local libraries, again to include more people into digital work, getting more capability, helping people with technology. We will develop the Deadly Digital Communities Initiative. So this will be to improve literacy, particularly in First Nations communities. And the last one, growing Indigenous knowledge centres. So many communities have these knowledge centres. First Nations communities have these knowledge centres. We want to expand that and strengthen it so that people can go to a place to work, to learn, to be able to be included. So it's not just your traditional library. We want to have great technology in these places, great connectivity, so people can come and use and learn that technology. From a customer perspective, we also want to have great contemporary digital customer services. We'll put a hand up and say it's not always easy. So a lot of our current access points, our websites, they're somewhat inconsistent. They're sometimes hard to find information. If you know what you're looking for, it's probably okay, but you know, you can sort of find yourself having to navigate quite a few places to try and find information. We want to clean all that up. So we want to have a very strong digital channel product and platform strategy that will provide consistency across the channels. So if you're moving from mobile to web to face-to-face phone, whatever it is, you can get a consistency of service and a consistency look and feel about how that works. And that'll be supported by that digital design system that we're currently developing right now. And the enhancement to Queensland Gov.au. So Queensland Gov.au will be the entry point, if you like, for anyone wanting to get a service from Queensland Government. All government services is our vision of where that will land. And that will be, as I said, that consistent entry point, building on the franchise model. So we do have a franchise model. We're probably one of the first states to do that, but we really want to enhance that and make that a lot easier to use and be more from a focus point of a customer as opposed from government. You know, we're very good at structuring in our government silos. We need to have better accessibility for customers based on their life events. Leads to the digital priority life events. So we're working with the federal government and other jurisdictions on what about some consistency across Australia for some of these priority life events. Examples include birth of a child. So when a child is born, obviously it's not just a case of advising state or births, deaths and marriages and things like that, but you want to go to Medicare, you might want to go to Centrelink, you might want to get a whole heap of services that are at different levels of government. And how do we make that easier to traverse the complexities of different layers of government? And so we're working with the federal government at the moment on making that as simple as possible. And also linked to that is a digital birth certificate. So enabling that, maybe sometime in the future, looking at how do we incorporate that into a digital wallet that we're working with TMR, well, we are TMR, the old TMR, that we're working with TMR on. I'll talk about that in a sec. The last one there is keeping Queenslanders safe. So how do we improve the way that we support Queenslanders when they're undergoing hardship? How do we help them with community recovery? And how do we make accessing government support as easy as possible? Now this links to the digital licence. Chris spoke about the digital driver's licence. That's being rolled out now by our department, by TMR. It's in Townsville at the moment, but we'll roll out statewide. Underneath the licence, so the licence is the credential, underneath the licence is your identity. We want to use that identity for a whole heap of government services and make it really easy for when you come to Queensland Government, you don't have different passwords, you don't have different logins. It's all consistent and all a regular or a consistent interface for you to work through. Let me go on to digital market. So Chris spoke about improved connectivity. So obviously with all these ambitions that we have, you have to have connectivity. And we are the most regionally diverse state. We've got the greatest number of cities and towns across the state. No other state has this. And we need to make sure that all Queenslanders can participate, that they can participate where they live, that they don't have to come down to Brisbane to get a great job, that they don't have to come to Brisbane to study, that they don't have to come to Brisbane for great connectivity or good connectivity, that they can stay in their community, they can stay in their home, they can stay with their family and friends and still learn and still get a capable job. There's the Queensland Digital Infrastructure Plan. Chris touched on that, but that will identify areas of where we need to have effort and investment to make sure that we do have that great connectivity. And then there'll be a co-investment process with the Commonwealth, with industry, to make sure that we address those identified areas. There'll also be local government input and investment to make that as great as possible. I'm touching on industries and businesses. How do we make it possible or easier for SMEs to do business with Queensland Government? We're working with a number of agencies at the moment. We're trialling a little RegTech pilot, looking at how do we make it easier for when you're dealing with Queensland Government to do business with Queensland Government. Not just to get set up, but to address compliance issues. We're looking at food quality, food transport, etc. at the moment. And how do we make that simple, easy, understandable, and keep the process as fast and agile as possible. The faster we can make those processes, the faster businesses can stand up, the more encouragement there is for new businesses to get going in Queensland. So there's multiple benefits around that. The second one is how do we support businesses in adopting new technologies? So these aren't necessarily digital businesses, they're all businesses across the state. How do we help them picking up new technologies? And Chris spoke about some of the AI improvements and new products that are coming out. How do we pick up some of those products? Blockchain, NFTs, a whole heap of things. Some businesses will be sitting there going, I just don't have the bandwidth, the capacity to understand that. How do we support them? How do we bring them into the modern era and help them be as competitive as possible, both in Queensland, but also across internationally. The last one is getting more businesses into Queensland. So we want to attract as many, and this is more focused on digital businesses. How do we get digital businesses into Queensland? How do we get digital businesses headquarters in Queensland? So we're working with a number of agencies around strategies to look at making Queensland as attractive as possible. So it's not just rugby league, it can be a whole heap of other things as well. The last one here in digital market I want to touch on is talent for digital careers. So we want to create that pipeline. You know, unemployment's very, very low at the moment. People can find jobs, but there's a shortfall of capable people in Queensland who can take on a digital career. How do we help those people transition into that digital space? Again, the pipeline starts early, so it starts with school kids, but it might be people mid-career. It might be people in industries that are starting to close down. And while there's probably a bit of an upturn at the moment, you know, we'd probably say mining, particularly mining of coal and things like that, we'll see a gradual decline of that in the coming years. And so how do we encourage those people to take on a career in digital? How do we train them, educate them, promote it? And we're investing in our Digital Professional Workforce Action Plan. As Chris said, we've trained 5,000 people already, but our goal is to train 10,000 people to be ready to take on a new digital job. And that'll happen over the next 12 months or so. The First Nations Digital Career Program, that's in partnership with Microsoft. So that is targeted very much at First Nations people who come in, work with us, work with Microsoft to be educated, to be skilled, and then to actually be placed in a particular job. The goal is that we would look at 100 per year. We're working up to that at the moment, but that program we see as extremely successful to get those people into those careers. Again, some of the careers might be located in different locations. Some might allow them to stay in their communities. And the last one up there, explore alternative career and education pathways. So this again is us working with education on looking at what the opportunities are for kids to make sure that they're getting trained. And a big challenge in education for us is that it's very hard to get great teachers in community to be able to teach digital. Finally, digital government. I'll touch on this very, very quickly because I do want to get the panel up. Core and common digital assets. We want government to be more efficient. We want to focus on the important customer-facing outcome type things. So we want our back ends to be as efficient as possible. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. So we're developing a framework for how we consider core and common. These will be solutions that we reuse and share across government. And there are already some examples that we're running up. Workplace health and safety, e-invoicing, time and attendance. So some of the core functionality of government will make that as consistent as possible so that we can then invest a lot more in those customer-facing, community benefit digital outcomes. Chris touched on the enhanced data sharing and analytics capability. How do we improve data sharing across government? There's probably a consideration of what sort of frameworks we need to put in place, policies, legislation, etc. The Cybersecurity Queensland Strategic Plan and Program, Chris touched on that. We'll develop a shared services strategy so that we've got a consistent pathway towards shared services, as well as a platform strategy for shared services and for the delivering of shared services across government. Improving government digital capability. So this builds on that pipeline of talent I spoke about before. We want to look at new ways of attracting people into government. So we do have a graduate program at the moment. We want to enhance that, make that more possible for more people to come and work in government. And the final one is innovation. Chris touched on that, but we will spend a lot of time on what are the key technologies coming up that we want to innovate, that we want to leverage for the benefit of Queensland Government, making sure that we've got that social consideration, those risks well managed, information privacy well managed, those sorts of things, and that we can leverage those technologies. So we will need your assistance in looking at those, but we want to set up a bit of a hub so that we can look at those new technologies and how we innovate with them. So I'm a little bit over time myself, but I might ask Andrew, Dallas and Chris to come up on stage. So Andrew Spina, he's the Deputy Director General of Service Delivery and Operations. He's in the third chair, I'll call it. And then Dallas Stour, he's the DDG of Transformation and Enabling Technologies in the far chair. So Andrew looks after QSS and Smart Services Queensland. Dallas looks after a whole heap of things: SciTech, cybersecurity, procurement, data and analytics, and a number of projects. So we're going to open it up, just if there are any questions that anyone would like to ask. Who's got the first question? Great.
Thanks very much. Look, Andrew, Dallas, Darren and Chris, thanks for sharing your time today. Earlier, Chris, you touched on the digital games. Darren, you talked about Cyber Secure Queensland and the strategy. We're 1 year into the green and gold decade. We're 3,300 odd days from the greatest show on earth. We've got games precincts across 8 LGAs. We've got the involvement of key state and federal agencies. We've got critical infrastructure elements. We'd love to hear your views on what that alignment looks like. Who drives that alignment? What does the next 10 years look like? We're going to deliver Secure 32. What does that alignment across that look like? It's not the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. This one is the greatest show on earth.
Yeah, I might just start off from a cyber point of view. So, as we mentioned, there's been consultation on the Cyber Secure Queensland strategy. That's in the process of being curated at the moment, and also the process of approval through government. It does look forward through to Olympics 2032 and looking at how we can deliver a digital game and how we can do that in a secure way. A number of focuses in there, and that is around how do we work with building up capability, not just within state government, but also state authorities, local government, and also industry generally. I've touched there on a number of occasions around digital capability. What I can say in terms of before that's released, without preempting it, there's a strong focus on skills development for more broadly. Skills not just from a people point of view, but just a broader uplifted capability. Because the view is that we're only as safe as our weakest link, so to speak. And so in order to deliver a successful Olympic Games, for example, we need everyone to be doing that safely and securely, whether it's the local governments involved in that process, whether it's any of the digital and community or citizens, etc., and state government and federal government as well. Operationally on a day-to-day basis, my cyber team work very closely with the Commonwealth Government. Also very mindful of where the Commonwealth Government are going to in terms of their broader investments around cyber in particular, and also recognising that the risk threat environment is only getting worse, it's not getting better. And so it doesn't matter if there is a cyber attack in a part of the industry, it affects all of us, and we've seen that through the Medicare example, we've seen that through the Optus example as well. So that has permeated and has required action of governments to sort of deal with issues around identity information for citizens. So I hope I've answered your question.
Andrew or Chris, anything to add there?
I think Dallas covered the bulk of it. Yeah, that's good.
Great. Okay, any other questions? In the middle.
Maybe say your name and which company you're from as well.
Hi, thanks for your presentations this morning. They've been really interesting. My name's Simon Warner. I'm from Tactive. We're a local SME based in Brisbane here. One of the things, we've heard a lot of stuff going on today that is of interest to us and we'd like to participate in, but how do we build those partnerships with the Queensland Government so that when we talk about digital identities and we talk about things like providing operational activities to First Nations people and those sorts of things, we can't do that by ourselves. We're a small 30 people. We don't have the resources to be able to do as much of that development as we'd like. We'd like to work with the Queensland Government more to make that happen. So how do we do that?
I guess I'll take the first stab at that one. Look, I mean, we've got names up there or email addresses. I try and make myself as accessible as possible to provide guidance on, how do you get involved and provide direction. I think Andrew, Dallas and Darren try and do the same thing. So I would just say, if you have a proposition, if you want to get involved, reach out. The more you can say, here's us, here's what we stand for, here's how we can get involved, that makes it easier. We obviously have a lot of people that approach us, and we have to do some level of prioritisation on that. But again, I will always over-index to supporting Queensland small businesses, businesses that represent some sort of underserved or disadvantaged cohort. You won't have a lot of problems finding time in my diary. Maybe it's not a time that works for you. It might be a little bit earlier, a little bit later. But yeah, we try and be very supportive of Queensland small businesses. And as Darren said, part of what we try and do is help small businesses get access to decision makers and tenders and processes so that they can participate, because we realise that we play an important part in creating a thriving digital economy through the business opportunities that we give to small businesses.
I might add there as well as getting in contact directly if there is a specific thing you're interested in. Within my ICT strategic sourcing team, we've got Matt Roses here this morning that has a role for industry engagement. So if you've got specific questions around how you might get on government panels for various things, then that's probably a fairly good entry point to go to.
What's the other thing too we do, Dallas?
We have an SME participation scheme. So in order to support small business, there is a provision there to accelerate the procurement process from SMEs if there's an innovative solution without having to go to the whole extent of the government's exhaustive process sometimes of going out to and getting multiple quotes or a formal process. So Matt can also talk to you about how you might be able to utilise that as well.
What about the Spotlight, the Showcase program? I can't think of the name of it.
Yeah, we call it TIP.
Talk it up. Talk
TIP.
it up. That's it. Talk it up.
Again, where it's an opportunity for small businesses to come in and provide, I guess, what they do to a government audience in terms of solutions and services. Amelia, once you use the microphone, give me a hand.
I wrote big words on, I guess, but I'll use the mic instead. So Amelia Cardell, Matthew Rose up the back here is in the team that organises a lot of these industry-facing events, including Talk It Up, which Dallas just mentioned. And we also do around monthly supplier information sessions. We've just started, it's a relatively new program where often many hundreds of government buyers and procurement specialists will listen to a very short 30-minute discussion of what offerings you can bring to government. So we're always looking to expand our touch points so that we can put business in touch with government with a view to working together. So do reach out to Matthew. You have his contact details, or through our ICT strategic sourcing mailbox where you probably got your invitation today. Thanks, Dallas.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amelia.
There's also a question online. It's very, very similar theme, so we may have covered it, but hi, great presentation. Oh, there's more. Is there room for additional technology partners to support the digital group? If so, can you kindly advise the onboarding process? Thanks, Vish. That's from Vish. So room for additional technology partners. Chris, do you want to touch on that one?
Yeah, look, there's always room, and I'm inclined to kind of turn this back to you all as a collective. You know, we will be the first to admit that we want to find better ways. It's not always easy to engage with government, and I might also say, coming from the private sector, I'd like to find better ways to engage with you all. So, you know, it could be roundtables. We've moved into some fantastic new space in 111. We deliberately designed it to allow us to collaborate more with industry. But sometimes you just don't have the think time to actually get around to like, okay, what does this look like and how could it work? So it takes two to tango, so to speak. And we're open to ideas, and it'd be great if we could get those ideas from a collective standpoint. You know, what are ways that we could engage and collaborate and experiment and try new things in partnership with industry. You know, we talked about innovation before. The way I see innovation, there's really 4 components to innovation. There's I'll call it the research-based innovation, what's coming, strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats, looking over the horizon, what does blockchain mean, what does AI mean, what are other jurisdictions doing? That's one piece of it. I think there's the functional innovation, driving innovation deep down into the way we build apps, the way that we do data, and I think there's the cultural innovation. How do I build a cultural innovation from the bottom up across 1,700 people? And then the 4th pillar, which has a lot of question marks over it, is an innovation ecosystem that involves our partners, that is respectful of all the rules and the probity steps and processes that we have to follow, being a government organisation. And I have lots and lots of questions, and I think there's lots of opportunities, and I'd love to get your all opinion on how we might do that. Someone ask Andrew
another
a
question here.
Yeah.
Or two other questions. Thanks.
This one won't be.
Thank you, guys. It's Dave Burkett from Working Mouse. I've got a question I think is going to go to you, Dallas. And in regards to what Darren was saying in regards to the reuse of core and common assets, it sounds like a bit of a wicked problem that you've got there in regards to getting the reuse across multiple departments in franchising. Do you have any best practice that you've seen in that, or do you have a current working hypothesis?
So that's a good question for actually Andrew, who's
What is it?
who's doing the strategy around
I think this is
common.
going to be
So
my
he's looking,
question
he's
anyway.
feeling a bit left out. So it's good you asked the question.
So, look, there might be different ways that you can talk about core and common, right? So I'm going to go a little bit back to work that we've done within Queensland Government over many years, and so shared services, for example, was born on a core and common framework way back about 20 years ago, and looking at HR systems and financial management systems and so on like that. But really, we're looking across the entire domains of what we use within Queensland Government, and the key to using core and common is we shouldn't be wasting our effort on fragmenting our dollars, our scarce dollars within government, in looking for variations on the same theme, particularly when in a lot of cases these processes should be standardised at the back end, like you look at finance management, asset management, our whole procure to pay cycle. So back end is one thing, but then we're also looking right through our back end systems through to our customer facing solutions as well, and making sure that we've got a best practice arrangement that agencies can leverage off. Smaller agencies in particular that don't have necessarily the capability to look at what's available from a best practice point of view. So that's part of our role from a core and common perspective. So we're having a look at that whole core and common area with renewed vigour, looking across all of those domains and looking at where we've got it right now. And there's a lot of work still to go, there's no doubt about it. But our bedfellows in this is Treasury, of course, because they'll be saying, well, we actually are going to be scrutinising all of the digital dollars that are spent within government, and we should be sharing what's already in existence. So we're putting a framework around that. the criteria under which you will actually determine whether something should be mandated and used by all agencies, or whether we've got a range of preferred supply arrangements, or whether really it's the opportunities there for agencies to just do what they need to do. So a lot of work still ahead in relation to that, but it's a big focus for us, and it's the only way we're going to be able to deliver, I think, on this whole digital economy strategy, is if we make sure we put our dollars in the right areas. Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew. And I think also to us there's a cultural piece. So it's bringing agencies on board and getting a lot more collaboration. And since Chris has come on, we now have the Digital Leaders Group who are meeting very regularly. They meet every week. That's the CIOs, CDOs across government. And there's a lot closer discussion and collaboration of how we can go forward. So previously you may not have known what's going on over in other departments, but now just with that group coming together, there's a lot more banter and chat around what's going on. So I think there's a cultural piece as well. There was another question over here. Yes, thanks.
Yeah, hi. Tom Raymond from Extension. I'm conscious I'm probably standing in the way of morning tea, so I'll keep it quick. So you mentioned earlier the results on people's comfort sharing data with government, which is great, and then comfort again sharing more broadly across government. Are you seeing with some of the items that you mentioned a trend in that? Is it sort of levelling and there's active work to keep it level, or is it dipping, or is there any trend in that sort of data?
You mean in the survey results, what customers are telling us?
Yes.
Yeah, look, I think, so this is a yearly survey we do. We're actually just about to do a new survey, about to kick that off. We do something like 5,000 or so citizens across Queensland. We also do small business, and we go into other jurisdictions. As far as the data sharing aspect of it, look, I don't know. I don't know that we've got any real trend data on that. There's definitely an upward trend of we want more digital, particularly after COVID. People realise what it meant, what a significant impact it was on their life if they didn't have access to digital services. So that is a sharp trend up and to the right. And then if you just follow from that, they want digital services, they want interconnected services. Well, what have I got to trade off to get that? Well, I probably need to give you more access to my data. But holding on to that trust is a challenge that we have to take seriously. Trust is earned, and we've got to maintain that. Do the right things, be transparent about what we're doing. Things like the digital driver's license and how that will work with Tell Us Once. I think that will be critical. I think our intentions towards the end of the year of publicly declare our intentions around digital identity, I think is really important. Because there's always people out there that question motives and intentions, and I can declare there are no malicious motives or intentions. We just want to make it easier for people to get in and get out and do what they want with a secure identity that can't be stolen or manipulated, and then allow them to get on with their lives. But we'll see after in the next survey. Lots of things have happened. The profile of breaches, I won't name any breaches, we know what they all are, so I think the awareness is going to be heightened, so I'll be personally interested to see how those results have changed, to be quite frank.
And I think we're also hearing that people want to tell us things once and want us to act on that. Obviously there's a question of consent and whether they're happy for that to be shared across various government agencies. We need to look carefully that consent doesn't become almost an irritant when you're using a particular service, that I've always got to give consent, and just really is adding little or no value. So it's something we'll do in our design work.
And there's things that we need to do back within government. So Chris mentioned Tell Us Once. So having the platforms that consent's there to share, etc., that we can do that seamlessly between agencies. So, and that's one of the intents around Tell Us Once, an example, that there are information data entities that are shared through the API, Graph API, then there's a mechanism doing that relatively easily, and agencies don't have to keep creating a sort of one-on-one API all the time between agencies.
So I might just add to that, sorry, we'll all talk on this topic. I think it's an important one. if you look at it from, you said customer expectations and what's the trend looking like. So I know within one of the areas that I've got responsibility for, it's at Smart Service Queensland, that obviously people are ringing in and constantly telling their story again and again. The expectation is, and what they have with outside of government, I suppose, is that we already know about them. We already know this information, haven't I already said that? And so that expectation is continuing to grow because that's their expectation and it's their experience of what's happening, obviously, in all other sectors, that we already have this information. Yep. And so that's one of the key things from our point of view that we see as just continuing to grow, and we need to be able to support that. Yep.
We're almost on time. I'll give the opportunity if there's one last question. And while we're looking for that, there is a question online. And I'm going to throw this one to Dallas because I know he's got the answer right at hand. What about using ABS data to plan infrastructure?
Using ABS data? Funny you should say that. So not necessarily ABS data. We've done a lot of work, particularly in the digital infrastructure space. And the team that is working in that area have looked at a range of different information sources, particularly from the point of view of understanding where areas of disadvantage are, understanding the demographics of those areas. I couldn't specifically say what data sets there are, but there's been a whole range of things that we've used that one of my guys, Stephen's, done to map that, to map that across the state to help us inform ourselves in terms of where we're going to focus our engagement with the carriers, particularly as we try to leverage some of that $150 million of regional connectivity program funding from the feds. So that's one data set. There's multiple other data sets as well that we look at.
Excellent. Thanks, Dallas. Was there a final question? Okay, just over here.
Thank you for your time today, gents. It's been an awesome presentation. It's Ian Richards from Integration Works. You're mentioning the digital ID. Is that going to go across all Queensland government agencies? And my specific interest is IMR and Queensland Health.
Okay.
Do you want me to answer that one? The short answer is yes. The long answer is there are obviously complexities as how we link up various identities that people have across government and different layers of government. So there's obviously the federal MyGov ID. How do we make that as simple as possible for a citizen? Personally, I wouldn't want to have a Queensland Government identity, a federal government identity, a health identity. I'd like all those to be joined up in a secure digital identity. That's the vision. There's a lot of work to do to get to that sort of vision. Certainly within Queensland Government, that's our first target, if you like, and delivering services across Queensland Government, we want that to be consistent, using that digital identity that at the moment we're rolling out under the Queensland Government, under the Queensland driver's licence. That will be the digital identity that we use going forward. The driver's licence, as I said, is a credential. We're looking at how do you put other credentials, Queensland Government to start with credentials in there. Those credentials might be blue card, yellow card, seniors card, ... There are a whole heap of them. Interestingly, we're the first state to be rolling out an ISO standards-based identity and wallet, and that will allow us to do business not just within government, but with industry as well. So there's huge opportunities here for industry to start to pick up, how do I use that identity in my business? How do I, I'll use an example, when I go to clubs, I'm always asked for my ID.
That's to see if you're eligible for a seniors discount, right?
So you're asked for your ID, and they scan your driver's licence. Wouldn't it be great if you could just tap? All it gives them is a tick, and they've got a blockchain record to say, oh yeah, we had, Darren Bond came in and tick, but I've got no details about it. I don't know where he lives. I don't know his date of birth. I don't know his, etc., etc. And that gives people a lot more confidence about using the identity. The worst case is you go to the hotel and you see them photocopy your driver's licence, and then they throw it on a pile at the back of the thing, and you're thinking, oh my God, where's that going? You've got no idea. So industry, and this is the beauty of us building this to the ISO standard, industry will be able to leverage this identity for use, and eventually others will be able to add information and credentials to it. So I'll be able to put on, work history. I'll be able to put on maybe things like educational outcomes, uni results, all that sort of stuff. All that can be linked to that identity so that you can then choose what you want to share with certain providers at certain times. Huge opportunity here, huge opportunity. And we want Queensland to be at the lead of this. Other states are talking to us about what we're doing and how they can follow. And I know, this is just to have another go at New South Wales. I know New South Wales have a digital driver's licence. Theirs isn't built to that standard. They are now retrofitting the standard to what they've built, working with us on what we've done to understand how they can build to that standard so that you've got an identity that can be used within the community. Well, yes, on the scoreboard, and I'm in trouble when I get back to work. All right, I'm going to wrap it up because we do have morning tea. Can I thank Chris, Dallas and Andrew for being part of this panel. You'll get a survey about today's content that, if possible, we'd ask you to fill in and provide us your feedback so that we can improve these presentations going forward. Tell us what you want to hear in future presentations. There's the Business Queensland website, and this will be published up on the Business Queensland website very shortly. And there are email addresses up on the thing now. You can contact the PiT team. Can I thank the PiT team because that's Partners in Technology team. These things don't just magically happen. There's a lot of work that goes into organising them. So thank you to Matthew Rose, Kate Richards, Amelia, who introduced herself before, and Tracy Middleton. So thank you to those people very much for setting this up. And please join us out on the terrace for a bit of morning tea and a bit of a chat. Thank you.